Okay. Wow. Here we are. All right, okay. What's happening now is that we are bearing witness live to the semifinals of the 5D Chess World Championship. Semifinals, which I already said, played against Andrey and Ryan. I don't know why I'm having trouble speaking today, but Andrey's playing Ryan. They're both. I have absolutely no idea who's the favorite here. They're just jumping right into it. They banned down to defended pawn. The format is that there's a pick ban process. There are 5 variants: defended pawn, turn 0, reverse royalty, princess, and another one. Which one have I missed? Half reflected? I don't know if I said half reflected, but wow, okay, they are blitzing through the opening here. Game 1 is defended pawn. So it's a best of 3 of best of 2s. So the first variant is defended pawn. Andrey's got white first game. Second game is going to be colors reversed, same variant. Then they're gonna pick ban again into a new variant, and they'll play, you know, and then switch colors. And if someone hasn't won 4-0 in those games, then there'll be the third variant. And then if someone hasn't won like 4 out of those 6 games across those 3 variants, 2 games per variant with colors swapped between, then there'll be a tiebreaker. And we won't worry about that until we get there. But for now, here we are. Andrey's got the white pieces. We are spectating through his perspective. He hasn't turned off the animations, but I think it'll probably be fine. Immediately we see, okay, so Ryan did publish a Lichess study that outlined what he kind of believes is like the best safe opening for black in this variant that kind of allows you to so as you can see, you develop the knights early, you push this little pawn here, you get to prevent shenanigans, and then you frappuccino the kingside bishop, like King's Indian situation, and that enables you to castle. And once you're castled, you know, you're sort of safe out of the early game against too much like hyper aggressive nonsense. Andrey, on the other hand, has opted to push b4 c4. He's got his bishop staring down black's kingside, which is really good when your opponent has set up like, you know, a sort of bunker-y situation like this. I think this opening makes a lot of sense. So it looks to me in this position as though both players are basically, we're probably not going to see too much early game degeneracy. Let's see here. Is there a 5D fork of Lichess? There is not a 5D fork of Lichess because the study was just like before any timelines happen. You can set up like a custom board state. So Ryan just set up the defended pawn board state and then talked about like, okay, these are the moves that you do to prevent like early crazy travel aggro stuff, and then you're good, and then you can play the game. It was interesting. So in general, what are we looking at here with a5? A5 coming out for Ryan. A5 is an interesting move, huh? Wow, a5 is like, okay, so I think that it's not. I'm gonna have to go back. I don't remember when e3 was played, but something I remember that part of one of the ideas that black has is if white isn't careful. No, because this knight's here this entire time. I don't know. So one thing that a5 enables is queen a7, and then it threatens to, you know, it like stares down the f2 pawn / e3 pawn, but I don't think that white has anything to fear here in that situation. Ryan wants to open everything right now. A3 looks really interesting. Does Ryan want to open everything right now? Time to pivot into hypergraph. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I suppose it's kind of a pain in the ass for... Is it though? A5. Give me a second here. I guess... Bishop up. I'm like immediately kind of perplexed. This is a little awkward for Ryan's light squared bishop here. It's gonna have very obvious difficulties kind of developing. It's also awkward because his queen and his light squared bishop, like normally when you castle in this variant, you know, you're pretty safe, except it's still easy to like crack open a castle type fortress in 5D chess. You know, that's just the way it is. You like throw pieces at it and your pieces are generally more like offensively maneuverable than your opponents are defensively maneuverable. And so having difficulties getting this queen and this bishop over to the king side is going to potentially be a factor here for Ryan if Andrey, if he does decide to castle soon, and if he doesn't decide to castle soon, like it's gonna be like all of Andrey's pieces are already pointing at his opponent's king side, which I think is a really good way to play this. Like doing the, instead of like the two knights out, getting the bishop over here, that is kind of like the advantage. Like this knight is kind of stuck, but it's also defending f2, which is like the source of actually a lot of black's counterplay. I think Andrey's betting on Ryan castling here. I think that Ryan castling is sketchy here, and Ryan castling is like kind of the big idea behind... I think this is the... Yeah, like the big theme in Ryan's openings for defended pawn, especially as black, is to sort of like establish a position where you can castle early, you know, and sort of like get out of harm's way and then just play it from there. And I think that a lot of Andrey's, like the scrutiny that Andrey has sort of placed on like the validity of this opening is based on White's opportunities to like pressure the castled king side. And I think that Ryan's pretty cognizant of that, and that's the reason that he's not going ham and castling immediately. I wonder if taking here would have been maybe okay. What if taking here was okay? Because this pawn hadn't been pushed yet. And then maybe you could like sack the bishop, get the queen to b4, and then travel onto e7. Because e7's undefended, and this pawn hadn't been pushed yet. There are no pieces that would be defending, I think, e5. And so after a queen travel here, king takes, only legal move. Because I don't think that... Well, maybe black would have the opportunity to travel back and recapture with the knight. But then after king here, this, and then he's got to like sack a queen. Or no, then he could definitely travel and recapture with the knight. I don't think any early game travels. You always look for early game travels. Like the consequence of frappuccinoing this bishop early is that like this bishop actually performs an important duty, which is to defend the e7 pawn. I think probably there isn't actually anything there, but you always have to ask yourself, right? You're predicting h4 as soon as Ryan castles. I think that's reasonable. Yeah, I mean, as soon as Ryan castles, you're going to start interrogating the structure here, right? Turtling in 5D chess is much more complicated. Can't just block, always have to be able to recapture. Yeah, definitely. And you know, you always have fewer pieces in any like potential opponent's offensive travel. You've got fewer pieces than your opponent does, right? And it's also it's easier for white to throw their pieces over here than it is for black to, you know, bring their pieces over here. Oh, we get an immediate h4, which I think makes a lot of sense in this position. This has been action packed so far. Holy butts. Because go for some ham. Get it going ham. No, I gotcha. Before the queen defended e5. No, I know the queen defended e5, but then you'd force a sack, right? Of the queen, which I think is an operant theme in one of the defended pawn games that I played recently. I can't remember which. Maybe it was against Crazy for the qualifiers for this final bracket. I'm not sure. I have a feeling that a lot of this game is in the meta right now. I was thinking that might have been why Ryan played a5, because there might have been ideas of b5, queen b4 at some point. It's possible. It's possible that he wanted to, because this is the one weakness. This has come up in a few of the defended pawn games that I played recently, where the main weakness coming out of the opening for Ryan's structure here with the, you know, hyper King's Indian, I guess, structure or whatever, is that as soon as you frappuccino this bishop, it abandons the defense of the e7 pawn here, and that's actually something that you can like capitalize on, or at least that puts like a lot of pressure on you. And so maybe a5 was to prevent access to this diagonal. Like, it's certainly possible. I don't know. It's weird. a5 is a weird move. a5 is a weird move when the theme as black is like you're scrambling to set up a position that's, you know, sort of solid and can't be overwhelmed by the white pieces. I had a pawn on c7 as white in an earlier. Oh, a pawn on c7 as white in an earlier game. That's interesting. Discouraging the castle, maybe. He probably also wants to bait h5 too. h5 is super scary, because then the thing is, okay, in this position, Ryan I think is actually probably safer not castling. The only issue is that he's also kind of made it difficult for himself to, wow, he trades on b4. He's kind of made it difficult for himself. Well, okay, both players can't really castle queenside, but I think that Andrey's doing like a really impressive job of not, wow, he does go for it. Okay. So I mean, he's kicking the bishop, so it forces something to happen. What? Okay, so what do you capture with? And what? This is weird. Wow, I don't know. I can't really make heads or tails of this. There's a lot going on, and it's happening so quickly. Do you capture with the bishop there? Do you take your bishop off the long diagonal? I know that in general, well, yeah, if you do the queen, if you capture with the queen, then this isn't possible. He also obviously can't push like this to kick this because it's mate in one. So maybe if you take with the queen, then the bishop comes out here, preparing to push this pawn or something wacky like that. Andrey wanted to take with the bishop. I guess just because he didn't want the queen to get kicked. It's not clear like exactly how that would have happened anyway. So this bishop is defended by this queen, so it's not like he has to address this immediately. This is actually maybe like a rare opportunity. Okay, he pulls it right back to the long diagonal. The fact that b6 is currently undefended is interesting. I was thinking, what if you kick the rook with the knight? Why not recapture with queen? I can't really tell. I think there were maybe some ideas if you recaptured with the queen, because then again, this knight covers this. I was thinking like push with the queen, and then if this happens, you can push this pawn before he pushes c5. Okay, weird. Wow, Ryan. Dude, this is like a Rambo rook here on a3. Being a general nuisance. Both players, time is pretty even here. Both players are using about 6.5 minutes of their time. Wow. I mean, the bishop's super defended, so it's not necessarily anything that Ryan has to worry about, but Andrey probably doesn't want, like, this rook. Okay, so here is the impressive thing about what has just happened, right? The queenside rook for Ryan here was basically like going to be the least useful piece in the game. Okay, actually, all right, now that I see how the position has developed, suddenly I think Ryan's a bit of a genius. So in the earlier position, it was kind of locked up. You didn't really want to overextend on the king side or commit to a castle because all of your opponent's pieces are directed toward your king side. So that's pretty monk-ass. Your least, like I said earlier, it's difficult to activate your queenside pieces like this light square bishop and this queen as black to get them to participate in sort of the defense of the king side, right? Well, what have we seen Ryan do? We've seen Ryan push this pawn up the board, force this pawn trade, and that's enabled him to activate what was by far like the least useful, most slow to activate piece on his side of the board, and he's basically forced his opponent to enable him to trade his least useful, most clumsy piece for like what is a core piece in like the offensive that Andrey is attempting to mount. Like these two bishops staring down the king side were actually like a huge factor. And so like somehow in a way that I would never have anticipated 5 moves ago, Ryan has managed to trade his queenside rook for the dominant long diagonal bishop, which is probably crazy. That's fucking dope. That's like crazy how that happened. And I mean, there were ways to prevent this. There are definitely ways to prevent this. I think capturing with the queen probably makes it a lot more difficult for Ryan to do this. But wow, that's nutty. Okay, so now what happens? Now this bishop is actually going to be probably like a huge asset for Ryan and a big pain in the ass. But I mean, Ryan, it's not like Ryan's out of the woods just yet. Andrey took that opportunity to weasel his bishop here onto h5, which I think is really good. I think without a dark square bishop, h5 for black becomes a much more viable defensive option. And so taking that option away from Ryan, I think is really good for Andrey to have done. Andrey now considering what to recapture with, I suppose. Or, I mean, I think it's probably obvious that you recapture with the knight, unless I'm missing something. So maybe he's considering whether he wants to recapture or not. There might be an insane world in which, I don't know. What if Andrey's considering like capturing this pawn instead? Or maybe something like that, right? Because what if like takes and then you trade and then you take this pawn with the bishop afterward? Like, okay, what if pawn takes? Okay, so if rook takes, then you take this with check. And that's like a huge pain in the ass, and then you take back with the, yeah, he does it, the mad lad. He's so, okay. So yeah, this is actually crazy. Looking at this is kind of scary now for Ryan. Look at the, okay, so what do you do here as Ryan? If you take here, yeah, like I said, then you take with check, which is like kind of nightmarish to have to be missing your FNG pawns like this. You can't castle queenside anymore. He does okay, he captures, he ignores, because you don't want, I okay, exactly what I said has happened. Yeah, now you, What do you do? Okay, I think that hiding behind the pawn like this is probably the best defensive option for, because now he basically still has a structure. This is crazy. Wow, this is insane. Oh, now okay, holy butts. This is a game, man. Wow, so we're straight into it. Okay, yeah, of course you take the rook here as Andrey. Oh, hiding behind this pawn, Ryan's kind of fine here, but if Andrey gets like a moment maybe to like rotate this knight from d1 to like c3 and then e5 to kick this knight, suddenly this pawn is gonna fall, and there isn't really much that Ryan can do to stop it. Obviously Ryan, by the way, last turn he couldn't have captured this. If you're thinking, oh, he could have like taken the pawn, probably a lot of you aren't thinking that if you're 5D experienced, but then Andrey has mate in one by well, soft mate in one. Ryan can always travel in order to recapture with this knight from a different timeline, but bringing this knight one turn in the past mates the king on f7 because no black piece is currently defending f5. But holy butts. Dreamer says the best advantage is now that white can't sack on f7 anymore. True, but wow, it's crazy that okay, so I think that it might maybe look, if it looks crazy to you that Ryan decided to do what he decided, which was to kind of like ignore the pawn and just take the bishop. Actually, the light square bishop here was really terrifying. If you had like captured this pawn with either of these pawns instead of like capturing the bishop with your rook as black, the white bishop here sacking into one of these pawns with the queen bishop battery like pointed in this direction was actually like super lethal. Because if you take back, you can't like, if you capture with one of the pawns and then the bishop sacks, you can't recapture because then the queen just wins. And there are also a lot of travel opportunities that you give white. Anytime you've got like a queen bishop battery staring down your king side, you have to be really cognizant of basically that's like an insane that's like an insane aggressive tool that your opponent has in 5D chess. And so disrupting that, which again he's managed to do with his queenside rook, which is crazy. Wow, this is fantastic, dude. This is already like delivery. If this is like the one cool game that we get out of this out of this set, then I'm happy. We can walk away from this with a grin on our face. Now, okay, so Andrey's got the two rooks. Bringing the knight in, I think I agree with, even though it's spooky because it's spooky that this pawn is undefended. But, you know, I'm sure that Ryan's thought of that. This knight, it forks the g2 pawn and the queen, and also kind of liberates this light square bishop. So, you know, you really have to ask yourself, and right, like this is a very tempting move, but you have to ask yourself, like, okay, am I opening myself up? Wow, and suddenly with the pawns, it's also much more convincing that Ryan, that like this black queen is going to be useful in the defense of the position. Andrey's gonna have trouble. Wow, in this way, there really is this crazy, there's like a big dichotomy in this game more than a lot of the games that I've seen recently. I should move my camera out of the corner, by the way, so that you guys can see. I've trained myself to always move the timeline centrally so my camera isn't in the way, but Andrey, you know, doesn't have the stream in mind right now. He's just playing for his life. There's a crazy dichotomy between like the queen side and the king side in this game. Which is that there's this, like, okay, these pieces can't, like the queen and the bishop here can't completely abandon the defense of the queen side because this rook is going to be active. The rook kind of actually defensively does serve like more of a purpose than you expect it to. So that being gone, I don't know, like moving this rook over and like pushing this pawn or something might be like really annoying for him to deal with. But right now, Andrey is the one who has to answer this aggression coming out of Ryan. The fact that he doesn't have any bishops is a factor. Okay, so he asks himself one question, Andrey does, which is, if I see the free piece and I take the free piece, is there actually a way that Ryan can leverage his pieces to take advantage of the fact that I've opened this diagonal? That's what Andrey has to ask himself. He seems convinced that it's not an issue. Ryan immediately moving the bishop out, which both, you know, threatens shenanigans along this diagonal. So this pawn was vacated here on this turn. So Andrey has to cover either e4 on this turn or e5 next turn. Ryan also pivots his bishop into a position where he can, you know, obviously capture the pawn on f7 and just generally rotate it over to the king side. Wow, this is a crazy game. This is really nutty. Holy butts. Okay, so Andrey, yeah, one way to do it is to, oh, now he's looking at travels, which maybe isn't a terrible, no, he's not really. Yeah, so either you can block the diagonal or you can just ensure that it's impossible for the opponent to have a piece in place to mate your king in the past by threatening those squares. Or, you know, really what's going to happen, what Andrey's threatening here is to put his knight here on the turn. Well, I guess, what's the idea? Maybe the idea is Ryan can't really check him either. So maybe, well, okay, Andrey can recapture the bishop if it captures here, or he can sack into the bishop like this. That pawn, I'm really like racking my brain to try and figure out whether there's actually something that Andrey can do offensively with this pawn. And not a lot really comes to mind. This is a tricky situation. I think that Ryan is stabilized and Andrey's structure is kind of in shambles. He's got the knight that's undeveloped and his rooks, it's not really clear what they're doing. And he really has to worry about this. He really has to worry about this open diagonal. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, if he really wanted to, he could sack his queen. You know, that's kind of out of the question probably. Okay, so he does choose to block here. Okay, this is admission by Andrey that there's no better way to close to close the diagonal here. Is there? So we get the knight for knight trade. Andrey's pieces are much worse developed here. The thing about this is, if you in this position take the knight as Ryan, well, are you in trouble? Are you in trouble as Ryan? I don't really know. Yeah, knight g5 I think was super sharp. Knight g5 is a very ballsy move, and it didn't surprise me at all to see Andrey consider this earlier. Can someone remind me what happened to Andrey's dark square bishop? Or no, his light squared bishop? His dark square bishop's the one that got traded off, right? No, his light square bishop? What happened? What happened? What? Someone remind me why Andrey's down to bishop. Oh, the rook took both bishops. Oh yeah. Okay, Andrey. Now I remember. The rook took both bishops. Thank you. Yeah, Andrey thought it was worth to sack the bishops for the for this offensive opportunity. This is kind of crazy. Okay, so obviously Andrey can't capture the knight here, because then he loses immediately. Like, he uncovers this diagonal and this bishop mates him. This knight, it's important to point out, was actually performing a really important duty here, which was the defense of the h7 pawn. So now there's an idea. Now there are like potentially ideas for... Oh, actually... No, that's crazy. Never mind. That's too crazy. What's being threatened here? Is he just gonna take the knight? And then you take back, and then what? Maybe like, this bishop is staring down. What I failed to comprehend a moment ago is the fact that actually this bishop is staring down this knight. It's not just this knight that's attacking this knight, it's the bishop that's taking the... And if you allow the bishop to... If you do like knight takes, then you can't take with the pawn, because then bishop takes wins the game. Simultaneously, knight out would also win the game for black, because that would be like 2d check and also 5d check. So I think maybe this knight move was forced. The time is also... We're down to 8 minutes for black, 3 minutes for white. I don't think white has time to play something like rook takes h7, but if he did, that'd be fucking nuts. That would be insane. Okay, so covering this diagonal, it kind of forces the issue for black, because white has offensive options here, as crazy as that sounds. What is this game? Knight g6 was illegal there, right? I don't know. Knight g6 might have been illegal. No, I don't think so. No. I don't think it was. Wow. Rook for 2 bishops is such a scam trade, TBH. Scam for who? That's what I meant last week when I said Ryan just wins. It's not clear that he just wins, but... And it's also not... I mean, if you... We'll talk about it in the post-game. You keep forgetting all the reasons why. I like my stonkfish move. The bishop slaughter, Rambo rook. Stonkfish, knight d7, queen fork. I see. Yeah, knight d7, queen fork. I don't think that knight d7 is... It just forces... It forces the bishop capture, right? Or the king to move, and then white is soft-mated. I don't think white loses on the spot. Yeah, not illegal, but checkmate in a turn. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Heckmate. I do enjoy heckmate. Wow. Okay, so we get the knight sack. Hold the phone. Stop the presses. Okay, of all of the options there, now that Andrey's got pieces that are like active and dangerous, Ryan opted to sack his knight on f2. Ryan sacked his knight into the f2 pawn, as opposed to like trading it for one of the central knights and having like the bishop pair to fuck with. I guess he's sufficiently threatened. Is there a travel here? Is there like a Tchaikovsky maybe, no, all, because this bishop can't go anywhere. Like, yeah, this opens up the diagonal for this to happen, but I don't think you care as Ryan. Or sorry, as Andrey, that this bishop is open. Or sorry, that this diagonal is, I can't speak. Holy butts, I'm so flustered. Queen a7 is nutty. Oh my god. What an endgame! Look at this position! Wow, what? Is there a travel? Okay, Andrey's got 2 minutes. He's not checking for travels. You do need to... Okay, this pins the knight so that the queen has to capture if this bishop happens, which is also the thing preventing the sack from happening, isn't it? Because if you do knight h7, okay, now he's checking the travels for the queen. Wow, the travel onto f7 happens. Does that lose him the game? I didn't see on that board if he had like a knight that could provide immediate checkmate. But here, you can do bishop check the king in the past, right? Oh no, sorry, that doesn't work. Because the queen stays on the same diagonal. Yeah, okay, so we see this idea, which by the way actually enables this rook to come into the game, which is super scary. Yeah, so rook takes h7 is like about to be checkmate. So what's the counterplay? What's the counterplay here for Ryan? Holy shit. Queen check, then bishop gives mate. Queen check, then bishop gives mate. I don't see what you mean. Like queen check here on this board? And then you like take with the pawn? And then what? Yeah, you can take with the pawn. You don't have to take with the queen. Obviously, yeah, this position is absolutely absurd. So this move, the only thing that's preventing this move from being made is this queen, but there's no way to like kick the queen in the position. You just don't have pieces. 4 minutes on the clock for Ryan, just under 2 for Andrey. It looks like, shockingly, the person who is out of defensive options, I can't tell if it's that one player's offensive options outsped the other, or if like it's the deficiency of the defensive options that was like decisive here. But I don't really see what Ryan can do to prevent himself from getting wrecked. Because like if the rook takes here, then you take with the queen and then you lose the game in 1 turn and it's like unpreventable, right? Because the queen stays on this diagonal, so there's not really anything that you can do with this bishop. Although maybe you can force... Okay, because actually bishop up... All right, wait. What if you take with the rook? What if you... Can't you force... Okay, hold on. Stop the presses. If you take as Ryan the rook, what happens? I guess Andrey captures the rook here, but then you can take the pawn, checking the king in the past. Oh, and then the knight... No, the knight's still pinned. Okay, so rook takes, queen takes, bishop takes here, I think mates this king, probably, in 2 turns. And so the queen only legal move has to sack into the bishop. And then you can take the queen with the king here, and this can't be mate because the queen here pins the knight. So you survive, but then you're down. You've got like a queen versus a knight and rook, and I think that maybe like this move blocks this diagonal, and then the queen can't get there soon enough to prevent mate. You probably also have travels, right? Like the queen after it recaptures, if this rook takes happens. Oh, sorry. No, yeah, you can force this to happen because he can't travel because you're checking the king in the past with this bishop. I think probably that's losing, but then maybe you have a travel. Okay, Ryan thinks that his best defensive option is queen check, then bishop gives mate. King takes e3. Oh yeah, king takes e3 as well. Okay, so he thinks that this queen travel actually works. I don't think that... Maybe he can exile? If he does like the knight travel here? Okay, so queen up to threaten this. What's happening now? The thing is, he does have defensive options now, right? Ryan has given himself pieces on this board to eventually capture on the other board. He loses the queen, which was the only thing preventing like the queen pinning this knight was actually a big deal in the present. It's Andrey's turn here, which is something that you have to remember. So Andrey can set up like a crazy, like a piece going from this board to the other board mate situation, potentially, probably with his queen, but moving his queen anywhere that like vacates the defense of this knight is absolutely terrifying. Wow, this is insane. Okay, this queen move also blocks the diagonal here. What the fuck is happening? What the fuck is happening? Queen e3 here. Queen e3 I think is, I don't know, it's kind of spooky compared to queen e2. I mean, it's certainly possible. It just enabled like queen e3 here, and then I don't know, man. Maybe like the knight here is just really spooky, right? Like queen e3 gets kicked by the knight. Take with the take with the knight. Okay, so the knight move's gonna happen anyway. But take with the knight, recapture with the bishop, and then you trade. Oh, the queen's undefended in that situation. So actually, that's probably not how it would play out, huh? Queen e3 maybe forcing the trade was a good move. Because if it gets kicked, you just run it into here. So it can't get kicked. You have to sack. Hope he sees his rook on a1 hanging at some point. that is good to, it is good to see. Yeah, so in addition to being just like a general nuisance here, this does threaten not mate in one, but I mean, if you lose the rook here, especially with this queen pointed at this, you know, the only thing that can, well, you could play, no, because you couldn't. You would have to have played the knight on f2 to d1 earlier. But he does. Okay, he doesn't he doesn't hang the rook on a1 to the bishop. Now their idea is to sack on d7 or time travel here. It's true, but I don't think you want to give Ryan a travel here. I think, Jesus Christ, man. And now there's crazy. Well, okay, so you can't sack the knight here. If the pawn takes, then you might be like screwed in the future. But if knight there and then the queen up. Jesus Christ. Okay, Andrey looking at his own travels now. He, Ryan's down to less than half a minute on the clock. So he's gonna have to come up with something quick here. It is noteworthy, perhaps, that, oh no, it's Andrey's turn here. So actually, at some point, knight takes f2 would have been check. Currently, knight takes f2 isn't check. It would have checked the king on this board. That's not how it works. Okay, he's lining up the bishop-queen battery for, I think, an attempt at mating on f2, which is wacky. I think you probably just take the bishop here. Okay, 4 seconds on the clock for Andrey, or for Ryan. 40 seconds on the clock for Andrey. Okay, taking the knight, it does enable the bishop to recapture here, but I think I can't believe that it's come down to this. Holy shit. Yeah, you don't have very many options. Here, it's this. Okay, that's crazy now because you've pinned your own knight, but I guess you don't really have to do anything with it anyway. The queen at some point, like given enough time, will be able to travel onto d7 and be defended by itself, so that will be like a mating travel. Right now, what are the things that Andrey has to be careful about? He can't really think about it because he's got 30 seconds on the clock. I think the position is holding. I think redefending this knight is probably the way to go with I absolutely agree here with this play. Now you just leverage, you figure out the fastest way to leverage your pieces and win here. Probably you capture here and then force him to I think you maintain the defense of the back line. You probably just take here because you don't have any time. And if he has to waste a tempo on this board to recapture, which he does because otherwise he loses, then you can think about how you win the game. This is insanity. Setting yourself up for mate in one on this board, I think, is good. Force him to have an answer with that, which he doesn't have any deep, like, defensive resources left to answer with. Here, you just make, like, a safe move that doesn't lose you the game, and you've only got 10 seconds. Better than Ryan's single second here left on the clock. I think the pawn push is like one of the only safe moves he's got left. I think pushing the other pawn and disconnecting the two pieces would have also been good. Ryan now has 1 second to make a move. Okay, Ryan, this is defending. Sacking the queen here makes sense because then the knight delivers mate here. He's looking for travels. He can now travel onto that board where the queen defends the queen. He's got 3 seconds. You have to make the travel. Andrey, submit. Oh no, Andrey flags. Holy shit. Andrey flags because he doesn't submit the move on time. That's absolutely heartbreaking. Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy fuck. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. Oh, dude, he had like he had so many ways to mate there and couldn't decide. I am lightheaded. I can't believe that that's how this game ended. Holy shit. He just had to press the F button. He had the move on the board. He just needed the hotkey. He just had to push F. Oh my god, Andrey. He had the game won in so many ways. That was such an insane back and forth. 1 second on the clock. No defensive options. He had mate on the board anyway. He didn't have to make this travel, but he saw that it was cleaner. Mate in 2. He went back to undo the move on the other timeline, it looks like. Yeah, he did. Dude, if this was game 1. My voice could not handle that at the end. I reverted using the 5D chess mechanics to a prepubescent state. Holy fuck, dude. I cannot believe that this was game 1. Andrey now just, I can't imagine being in Andrey's shoes right now. He's got to regroup. This is the most, this right here, okay, maybe you lose game 1 anyway. It's not a big deal. I don't understand how you could possibly come back from this as, I think this is mate in 1. Like, I don't see how you can come back from this as Ryan. I just don't, I don't think you can. Dude, gotta go get a cough drop after that. It is now crucial. What will determine the rest of the match is whether or not it's all in the mental right now. Andrey's mental is going to determine the outcome. Computers are scarier than engines. He needs to regroup. Andrey needs desperately more than anything else to forget that this game happened. For the main takeaway to be, okay, like, Ryan had a system. I beat his system. Like, tactically, we calculated better. You know, we were up material. You know, he played confidently, but like our aggression was rewarded in the end game. And so, you know, trust your instincts, regroup, clear your mind, move on to the next game. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. I can't handle this. Okay, we've started game 2. We've started game 2. Okay. here we are, game 2. We're running it back immediately. Andrey's got the black pieces this time around. Andrey's regrouped. He's ready to go. We see an identical opening from Ryan with the white pieces, which is interesting, because I guess he thinks that the onus isn't necessarily on white to be the aggressor in this variant. Andrey doing kind of the same thing that he did last game, but as the black pieces, which I think it's possible that... Okay, I'd say that this opens him up to like get sort of steamrolled by white's aggression more. Like maybe you can't afford to do this in with the black pieces the way that you can with the white pieces. The only problem is he's enabled the ambience, which is fine. The thing is though, Ryan's not necessarily going to punish him because he's got this sort of like defense first setup. Usually in 5G chess, the mantra is that a good offense is the best defense. It appears that Ryan kind of, for the most part, has the opposite mentality. Okay, this pawn up with exactly the same ideas before. That's fucking brilliant, man. Can I just say, A4 here, A5 in the last game is revolutionary. The question here, Andrey takes it with the bishop again. He doesn't think that it would just be better to do with the queen after what happened last game? That's really shocking. So, wow. Holy butts. How's the standing? It's 1-0 right now for Ryan. Ryan won game 1 in an absolutely insane, like 0-second buzzer beater. Andrey not submitting his game-winning move on time, which was insanity. But here we are. It's a new game, fresh start, tabula rasa. I say that, but it's basically exactly the same game that's been played, just with the colors reversed. Andrey really considering now whether he wants to, because I think taking with the queen, and I think Chad agrees, seemed to be the better play there. Because now wow. Now Ryan thinks that gives him the opening that he needs in order to castle safely, which is probably true. Now what do you do as Andrey? This is interesting. I wonder if maybe you push A5 to liberate the queen from the defense of A5. That's an interesting idea, right? Instead, okay, so it's kind of the same game where now Andrey is still, instead of like worrying, instead of sacking both of his bishops to the rook, to the Rambo rook over here, he just ignores the fact that there's no aggression, and he pushes his pawns up to interrogate the king side. Anyway, which, hey, like it really worked out for him last game. This knight is really annoying, and this knight move, I believe, wasn't a possibility last time. I guess because of the location of this. Oh, he's also castled now, so he doesn't have to worry about like the role that this knight was performing. This knight move is also kind of the reason that like maybe H5 wasn't as good, is because Ryan, by establishing this structure early, has enabled his knights to see more activity aggressively. So, okay, the immediate trade, which I think is probably good, because now this rook can get into the game. Centralizing this queen is like a challenge usually for the black player here. Although, this does beg the question, how does Andrey exactly... Okay, so queen gets kicked. How does Andrey activate this knight? Is a good question. Wow, Ryan really putting on the pressure here, which I mean does goes to show you go to show you that, like, I mean really it's because you're white, right? If you're white and you can establish a solid position, like black is going to be clambering to do that anyway. Like it doesn't appear as though, I think maybe H5 is like the ineffectual move that has sort of tipped the tempo advantage in Ryan's favor here. Andrey's structure just looks a little bit more clumsy. It's kind of difficult for him to activate his D knight. He does have the queen over on the king side, which is like an incredible defensive asset, but he's already overextended his H pawn, which means that he's not going to be able to, I mean, I don't think he had any intentions of castling anyway. It makes it difficult for him. How's he going to leverage the position now? Complete like dominant center control here for Ryan, really limiting all of Andrey's options, which is a very Ryan way to play the game, I think. Rook a6 again. I don't know about Rook a6 again. It's on the table, but I don't think Ryan has to do it. I think in the other position, it wasted a lot of like. It was a good option in the other. Wow, committing to h4 is really interesting here, especially because you can recapture with the knight. No, well, I guess then you're happy to trade. Okay, so before Rook a6 first, or whatever, the Rook a4 or whatever it was, to try and trade for the bishop, was a better move immediately for Ryan because he didn't have the options of establishing center control, and Andrey's bishop was more was more active. Here, if you can get center control first and then like limit your opponent's options, stifle his aggression, and then play Rook a6, is much better in this position. Please not Bishop b7. Wow, he ignores it again. Andrey, okay, what we've learned today is that Andrey has like absolutely no respect for bishops. Fuck the bishops. Lol, this is deja vu. It's like weird deja vu. Wow. See a free piece, take a free piece. Okay, so this is in opening up that triagonal. I'm not necessarily sure that there's a ton that Andrey can actually do to capitalize. I think this is a Ryan move. I think this is the move that Ryan will make. I think that he's got complete confidence that he can close the triagonal, like maybe with his bishop, maybe just pushing this pawn. His piece mobility isn't it crazy that like what Ryan opted to do was to kind of slow play his position and like get his minor pieces just barely out of the way and then castle, but he's got such a spatial advantage, which is like really interesting stylistically. I admire Andrey's disregard for defense. Lol, I caught a level 50 Roserade with level 20 Pokemon. What a non sequitur. How's it going, crazy? Congrats. Dreamer out here looking for who he's going to crush in the final. Battle for number 1 is on its way. This game 1 of the semifinal here is like an entire finals worth of hype that we've already that we've already experienced. I actually like ambience. I personally am not a fan of ambience. I know that Andrey is. I just find it kind of loud and disruptive. I normally like white noise, but I prefer having like kind of music on in the background. Why so sure? Yeah, that game was a nutty. I like knight h5. Why so sure of what? I out here looking for who I'm gonna crush in the number 3 fight. Is there a fight for number 3? There should be. How's it going, by the way, Sirtis? What's up? This is crazy, dude. This is a nutty one. Understood. I think Ryan has everything going for him, including the tempo that he didn't have in the first game, which enabled Andrey to really fuck shit up. Andrey considering the Rook h2 sack, which is fascinating. I don't really see where it goes. Maybe knight up, you know? It's kind of spooky. The knight moves maybe are what you're considering as Andrey. I don't know. Alternatively, yeah, pushing this and enabling Ryan to lock down the structure is probably unappealing. But I mean, it is forcing. It is forcing. He doesn't have to close the structure. Yeah. So as he's pointed out with his cursor here, pawn up and then bishop out is also an option, which is better. It's hard to say. This is definitely. I think Ryan wants to keep the tension here for sure, right? Yeah, I mean, if you enable Andrey to activate his knight for free, that's like that's bad for business. Wow. What do you do here? This is a pickle. Vacating the c6 square is tempting in order to play, because a knight on c6 would do so much work right now. Okay, so time management wise, Ryan's used about 2 of his minutes. Andrey about 6.5. So we are a little bit behind on the clock. We're on the back foot. I just say I think that it is like an absolute tragedy what happened in the last game, because if it just comes down to because I think at like this level of 5D chess, like white player advantage is real. The players are good enough at like taking advantage of like the tempo imbalance, that I think it's important to take advantage of. I think it's really important to take advantage of the of the games where you have where you're playing with the white pieces, right? If it comes down to if it comes down to Andrey having lost his win with the white pieces just because he didn't submit that move, and then Ryan sort of steamrolling as a result, then that's just going to be terrible. Currently our player advantage is true but not so strong. That's 60-40 for white. That's pretty crazy. That's actually a huge white advantage, bigger than regular chess probably. I'm not sure about that, don't quote me. Wait, why does Twitch censor knight g4? Twitch censors knight g4, excuse me. What? Only working moves are knight h5 or knight g4? Yeah, so you almost have his time down the drain here for Andrey, but yeah, that's one of the only real opportunities that you have here. This is interesting, man. Something that I neglected to mention, by the way, which is quite obvious in hindsight, is if you push this pawn, it's actually annoying for Ryan, because while this, like that turn, like he can't push this pawn to close the structure up, because this bishop and this knight, pushing this pawn does discover like the defense of this pawn with this queen. But there are 2 minor pieces attacking it, so actually that would have been probably kind of annoying for Ryan to deal with. Like bishop back would have been the obvious play, but then maybe you can kick the. Actually, maybe that's the reason that knight g4 was better. But maybe the issue is that knight g4 just gets kicked by h3. Man, this is wonky. This is wonky. Oh, okay. Other knight g4s and censor. All right, this is some weird shit going on with Twitch chat. But wow. Let's turn back on the music. Just cause we were overstimulated there for a moment. Interesting. Okay, so opting to just defend the bishop, which makes sense, because now like enabling this enabling the queen, kind of the least developed piece for Ryan there was the queen, right? And so kind of getting it operant into this game, like you wouldn't dare if you were Andrey, I think. Yeah, trade here, because while you want this bishop gone, you definitely don't want to let the queen get over here, because I mean there's like the queen rook battery, there's like the knight comes out here and threatens. No, that's like insanity. So you definitely don't. This is like a good opportunity for Ryan to pivot his queen onto the opponent's king side here. This, by the way, is the reason that, like, instead of h4, or sorry, h5, I don't know, I really liked kind of a5 to prevent the rook from getting in here in this annoying way. Or maybe a6, I don't know. something like that. Wow. You're not allowed to suggest bad moves. That's funny. This is absolute insanity, man. What a set. Andrey, it's unclear what Andrey's game plan is here. How do you break through? The half open H file is evocative. You gotta get more pieces into the game. The knight on D8 is kind of really cramping Andrey's style, man. But you know, like, you'd love to get it into the game. The same knight, that's kind of the issue with the structure that Andrey plays. So Ryan avoids this by immediately getting his 2 knights. Wow, Andrey makes this trade, enabling the opponent to activate the queen. Wow, I mean, personally, queen f4, the queen on f4 just looks nightmarish to me. Now what do you do? I guess you're trying to kick this queen somehow. Okay, maybe like forking the. Okay, actually, this is quite shrewd. Forking the rook and the pawn here. Really interesting. What if you played rook d6? Defending the pawn and also defending the rook. Yeah, this knight means that you can't. Okay, this is a crazy position, man. This is a crazy position. I guess you just kick the knight with the. Sorry, you kick the rook if rook d6 happens here. Maybe you just kick it with knight b7. What a crazy structure. we do get rook d6. I mean, it works, right? It works. It seems like Andrey's game plan is just to pray. I think to some extent you kind of have to make that your game plan here. I was looking at knight b7 to kick the rook, ask it some questions, activate your knight, and maybe enable, because there are holes. They're not super convincing, but they exist in Ryan's defenses here, right? Wow, this is insanity. Keep in mind also that Ryan is a player who's like kind of hyper cognizant of well, okay, I say that. I was about to talk about how Ryan kind of always keeps in front of mind Jurassic rook opportunities or Jurassic queen opportunities. And this game looks like it's probably going to go into like a late end game. But last game, he ran out of time before he considered like a crazy game-winning Jurassic, and he had the opportunity to set a few up. So I don't really know. I don't really know if I agree with my own analysis. This feels in favor of Ryan at the moment. I think it's safe to say that structurally Ryan is much more sound here. Look at like king safety. I mean, okay, there's like the trigonal right now, and like his queen side is vacant. But Andrey doesn't have the piece coordination, and like in a few short moves, Ryan is going to be able to mount like an insane attack. Although actually this rook eyeing up h3 maybe is actually operant because it prevents this bishop from hopping over and scoping out e6. Wow. This is crazy, man. If the d-pawn wasn't there, the trigonal of the king would be a liability that Andrey can target. You're right. Yes, absolutely. No, for sure. That's the reason that the fork of this pawn and this rook was really good for Andrey. Man, what is Andrey afraid of right now, like immediately? Like why, what are the, okay, so undefending f2, I guess, or sorry, f7, I guess, is like the main issue, right? With maybe that's the reason that you would want to not just immediately play knight b7. Because after, let's say that like a sack happens, queen takes, king takes, then this knight move also causes a discovered check to happen on the king, and this bishop is going to deliver mate soon. So, okay, Ryan ready with it. This is insanity because it vacates the defense. Like, if you make the trade now, you vacate the defense of this pawn entirely. If you want to, like, that pawn would be defended by the queen, and so it would cut off the road for the path for this queen to actually deliver like a triagonal mate to this king. So that a very shrewd defensive option there by Ryan. Like we said, very easy for like in 1 or 2 moves for Ryan to just look at this piece coordination, man. For Ryan to mount an offensive here. That's why this is the reason that knight b7 was scary, right? Just look at this. You've got the queen rook battery. You've got this is like crazy. Yeah, maybe. Although I don't really know, man. I don't really know what you do here. As Andrey, this is bad news bears. Honestly, not moving this rook I liked better. Because you could still castle queenside as Andrey, and with all the... That might have been a better defensive option. Holy butts. Not to mention, by the way, that this knight move actually enables a discovered attack for this bishop onto the knight as well. So, like, that's something that you don't want to give up the knight. It's like a... I mean, obviously you don't want to go down material, but it's like an insanely crucial piece in like the defense of the structure here. So this happens. Obviously the recapture happens. Question is, what the fuck do you do here? I think that this, because it prevents some travels as well, probably a good way to go about this. Probably a good way to go about this defense. Pulling the queen back just makes it really impotent, and I think that there's probably some like crazy knight attack shenanigans that are possible. The thing is, this battery, the queen rook battery, is kind of insane. But after all of these, listen, after all of these travels have happened, I mean, for what it's worth, this pawn is undefended. We're kind of quickly departing. Yeah, he's looking at I was gonna say travels. It's like difficult to make travels worthwhile at this stage with that bishop in the back. This is insane. This is insane. Holy butts. Listen, it's not over yet. We're even in material. Well, technically Andrey's up a rook for knight exchange, but you know, this is not that meaningful in 5D chess. Andrey's looking at travels. Ryan really taking his time here, considering whether he wants to enable this trade or whether there's an advantage that he can push. Because if you enable this trade, Andrey kind of stabilizes. His structure is worse, but he doesn't immediately lose, you know? You'd say he's down a rook for knight exchange. Rooks are good in the end game, and it looks like we might go into an end game here. I don't know. I don't know. Ryan really likes rooks over. When we were doing the when we were doing recent game review, which was I think Los versus Dreamer, which was a knight versus rook end game, really interesting. Check out that video on the YouTube. Ryan was in the comments talking about how he really was like a proponent of the rook side over the knight side in that situation. So maybe actually being down the exchange is something that he considers a liability here if he were to trade down to an endgame. But I mean, listen, you're so like, okay, trade recaptures and then take. You lose this, and then that's like really spooky, right? So that's probably something that you want to discourage. So, I mean, Ryan has decisions to make here. The game's not over yet. All right, the game's not over. Andrey's not looking at travels. He looks at where it all went so bad. Well, you could do both, right? Porque no los dos. 5 minutes on the clock here for Andrey. About 12 and a half for Ryan. So he's got a comfortable time lead, and I think that he's right in using it here. I don't know what the right call is. Without this knight here, actually, potentially this rook on this file, he opts to... I probably agree. I think I probably agree. It's hard to say. There's also the option, listen, a lot of people will tell you that it's not worth, but in situations like this, it might be worth if, as Ryan, you go for the trade here, trade happens, and then you do some other shit, I don't know, and you pull this bishop out here, and then you travel to capture the queen here on this board on this turn. Thereby giving your opponent back the timeline, but going up the only queen in the game in a position where your opponent actually maybe has somehow, I don't exactly know how, but has the advantage in king safety suddenly, question mark? I mean, not exactly, because his pieces are more poorly coordinated around his king, but like structurally with like his pawns, it's safer. He did that in a match earlier. Knight takes f7 here seems interesting. Knight takes f7 here seems... wacky. Knight takes f7 here? Knight takes f7 here seems pretty crazy. I think letting black take the pawn after the queen exchange gets sharp. I agree with Average. By the way, what's up, Average? I feel like I haven't seen you in a hot minute. How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. Well, you don't have rook takes f7. Because for this reason. Yeah, so obviously you do the trade, you take back as Andrey, duh. Now you're kicking the knight, so you have to ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky, Punk? No, I think that it's really interesting to see what happens here, because you've kicked the... Wow. Now Andrey has to be super careful, and the reason is this. If he takes this knight... What a crazy endgame we've come into. If you take this knight, then rook sack here, and then how do you stop the bishop? I suppose you stop the bishop by taking this pawn here. But if you... There's also the fact that, like... Okay, even without the rook sack, if you take here, then you enable a crazy Tchaikovsky, actually, where this bishop goes here. It travels to capture this pawn on this turn. This is a huge Tchaikovsky opportunity. Okay, this bishop here, if it moves to here and travels to capture this pawn on f6 in however many turns, this turn, then that's mate. That's soft mate, and it's really difficult to defend against as Andrey. So you have to think about preventing this. This is a crazy endgame. You can stop by bishop c6. That's a good point. You can probably stop by bishop c6. The only issue with bishop c6 is that you could push maybe this rook up to here and then pull the bishop back here and do it like that. And then you'd have to sack a bishop to prevent this from happening. Rook takes f6, bishop f3, then travel. I don't know if it works immediately. Rook takes f6 is ballsy, because you basically You're like hyper all in at that stage is the thing. Okay, we're in a crazy endgame now. It lands on queen. Oh yeah, the queen travel. I don't know if you want to do the queen travel here. Ryan has won here. I couldn't disagree more with Neith, actually. I think that it's not over. I think that with like Jurassic opportunities, it's actually possible. It's actually possible. You trust the Neith P Oracle? That makes one of us. I mean, listen, no doubt he's got like crazy offensive options here, but it's possible Bishop F3 then travel. Bishop F3 immediately then travel. Maybe I'd have to look back. Do the travel onto the queen, it'll be a Tchaikovsky. Oh, does the travel onto the queen do the Tchaikovsky that turn? Because that's pretty nutty. Okay, he opts to do the sack. Now as Andrey, you can set up a Jurassic. Wow, this is wild. This is a wild endgame. The travel experts arise. Yeah. Yeah. Time is also a concern. All right, 3 minutes on the clock for Andrey, considering his defensive options. Now, capturing here is sus, but also not capturing here is sus. It's like impossible to say what the right play is here. Is if this happens, well, the issue with like preparing a Jurassic is that he can just choose to not. If that bishop move happens, what do you do as Andrey? If you don't take the rook, it's still a problem, right? 2 minutes on the clock, so he's got to make a decision. He's got to follow his gut here, because you're kind of forced into. Yeah, that really sucks. Because like, to prevent him from winning like 2D diagonal on this board, if you capture the rook, you kind of have to play bishop e6. And if you do, then you enable the travel to happen without giving yourself counter travels. But if you prep a counter travel, then you can lose just by him opting to not do the travel that turn, right? Wow, down to a minute and a half on the clock for Andrey. He's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. This is really rough. Wow, look at this insane, very 5D endgame where you've sacrificed everything but a single piece. I mean, he's about to go up material post travel. Andrey really unsure what to do here. Probably that's the right play. He spent a lot of time considering that. Didn't see any other options. Now you have to ask yourself what you do as Andrey. Do you prevent the immediate victory, which enables a travel to happen? Or do you prepare a counter travel, which enables immediate victory for your opponent? When is this? But this isn't mate for like another few turns. So bishop here might actually be the best play, right? Because you threaten mate in 1, and wow, really, the rook move. I thought here because you prepare a counter travel of some sort, right? That's kind of crazy. You just go all in and take the rook. No, I think you probably have to take the rook there. Otherwise, I think it's more clear how you lose if you don't. I'm amazed that this was not the play. Personally, taking with the bishop, you threaten mate on the back rank, which you can't defend because then he eliminates the only piece that can actually allow you take the only piece, then he's out of pieces, right? And so he has to either immediately travel, which he probably was going to do anyway, or you have a counter travel, right? Am I wrong? Am I wrong with that? I don't know. Yeah, so this Tchaikovsky is like mate now. what Andrey's done is enable the counter travel by doing this. I guess the giving yourself the bishop, because the bishop travel for white this turn is victory. What you do here as Andrey, right? Okay, enabling yourself to travel with your own bishop actually doesn't go back enough turns to be able to do anything about anything, and so giving yourself the Jurassic here and also the opportunity to not only does Rook F8 enable you to Jurassic, which it won't after this turn, by the way, so he's got to consider that. It also enables you to prevent this from being an immediate win for white. So Ryan has now prevented this Jurassic from being a thing. Yeah, Andrey checking the... Oh, geez. Okay, so actually that's still the brutal travel that we talked about earlier because the rook is defending the bishop on F6. So the immediate travel, the immediate Jurassic, I think might actually be the best option here for Andrey, because you don't have any other options. It's not clear how you defend otherwise. How many turns into the game are we? I think like maybe 20 turns or something like that. If I had to guess, turn 25 is where we were, or maybe 26. Okay, so now you've gone back not that many turns, but being up a full rook in this mid game, although you're down a lot of time, is actually fairly strong. That's an interesting move because it enables, like in this position, what you want to do as Andrey is sack all your pieces as urgently as possible into the opponent's king side and take advantage of your material advantage. I don't know if this is going to be in time. It's difficult to say. I suspect not. Ryan has the win immediately on the other board, and also he's got 2 timelines down here. So this is going to be definitely an uphill battle for Andrey. The rook on the F file is like one of the most difficult locations to be able to sort of take advantage of your rook. Sacking pieces, going all in like this is the way to play in this situation. 30 seconds on the clock for Andrey. We are up to double the delay. That's 10 seconds per turn before the clock starts ticking. However, that 10 seconds flies by a lot quicker than you would like as the player on whom it is the onus to checkmate here. So Andrey's gonna have to think quickly, gonna have to think on his feet. His queen getting kicked is actually a real pain in the ass here. These are the kind of decisions where you just have to like make a decision and commit. That's super spooky. It's triply attacked by the white pieces, one of which is a bishop, and this opens up the diagonal. It's only defended by 2 pieces here. Yeah, so this is nuts. So if you recapture here with the knight, then the knight recaptures and you're kind of screwed. This move does do the trick. It covers the diagonal, and probably he's not going to be able to like vacate this. And then, well, then again, this is really spooky, right? Because something like this, and then you have to move that move. That move is a good move. Okay. Threatening the queen, and also the knight is here, and it's gonna fuck shit up, right? So, all right, Andrey's cool with opening up his rook at the cost of his queen. Otherwise, there was actually a mate there, I believe. This one is, that's weird. Okay, so the threat there was take with the rook, or sorry, take the knight with the knight. He lost on the back rank because the bishop, okay, this queen was serving a very important purpose, which was preventing the back rank, right? It was defending the A8 rook, which it was just too much. Ryan did a really good job. His pieces were better coordinated, which didn't matter so much on the original timeline. It mattered a bit, but it mattered like extra if you really didn't have time to worry about like positioning your pieces before throwing them at the opponent. I think this is kind of expertly parried. The travel is expertly parried by Ryan. At the end there, the thing that was threatened by knight F, by knight F, sorry, what am I talking about? By knight G6 was if the knight takes the knight here, then takes only move because it checks on in the past, and then the knight out here would have been mate after the because the bishop wouldn't have been. It was like you take the queen with the bishop. Sorry, you take the knight and then king takes. you take the queen with the bishop, rook takes, and then the knight here is mate, something like that. But wow, okay. Thank you for the bits, Nathaniel. I really appreciate it. Here we are. Okay. This is game 3 of the semifinals of the 5D Chess World Championship, being played by Andrey with the black pieces. We're seeing this from Andrey's perspective. And Ryan 4CEO, with the white pieces here. So turn 0, so far the score is 2-0 in Ryan's favor. So Andrey on the back foot here, but he's definitely not down or out. There is so much 5D chess left to be played. Immediately we see a sort of King's Indian type structure coming out of Ryan. I think Andrey has a lot more experience with turn 0, whereas Ryan, I think it's sort of agreed here by chat that we've got a more Ryan had sort of more comfortability with defended pawn, relatively speaking. Andrey did, of course, win the first game. Gretheben rating with a party of 8. Gretheben. This exact same thing happened last time you raided. Thank you so much for the raid, man. I really appreciate it. Blundermaster here with the incoming raid. How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. Welcome. You've come at an opportune time. We are witnessing now the semifinals of the 5D Chess World Championship. This is Andrey with the black pieces versus Ryan with the white pieces. Currently, Ryan is up 2-0, but the games have really been neck and neck. It's been some of the most high-octane, fascinating 5D chess that I've seen in quite some time. This is game 3 now. We're going to see what happens. Andrey went down 0-2 in the first 2 games, but he was 1 second away from submitting mate in 1 in the first game before losing on time, both players having no time left on the clock. So that was absolute insanity. Here, we're jumping into the second variant now. So the prior 2 games are played in defended pawn. This game being played here is the turn 0 variant. Really interesting structures coming out of both players. We do see Andrey only ever plays e3, e6 structures, as opposed to sort of like d4, d5 systems. That is kind of the other like philosophy, the other camp, school of thought, as it were. Ryan doing something really interesting. I didn't pay enough attention at the opening, but I think we had, if I saw correctly, I think we had like knight f3, knight f6, and then something like c4, c5, which is another, I think nowadays is very in vogue. I think it's kind of like a more modern opening, at least from the perspective of 5D chess. But it does prevent the sort of f2, f7 shenanigans, the vulnerabilities that you sort of have to account for in the turn 0 variant of 5D chess. Here we go. Now, this is interesting as Ryan finding... This is a very Ryan type opening because it does a good job of enabling you to establish a structure that's very solid. Establish like your king safety, shut down all of the sort of degenerate like 5D nonsense. And then do what Ryan does best, which is, just sort of in a very disciplined way, marches pieces up the board. Pressure his opponent and really basically like convert the tempo advantage that the white player has. So here the Ryan opting for in situations like this. Yeah, so I really like when you push the c pawn. When you push c5 like this, you basically have 2 options, and we're seeing them sort of take opposite approaches here, white versus black. The one option is to push your b pawn and then frappuccino, and then have a little sniper's bivouac situation going on. The other option is to keep your b pawn where it is, and to sort of get your bishop pair staring down at the same corner of the board. Usually it's more effective to get your bishop staring at the opponent's king side rather than the opponent's queen side, but you sort of take your pick. it's interesting that they've gone for sort of opposing structures here. One player has pushed the D pawn, the other player has pushed the B pawn. So we'll see how that works out. At this stage, it's the white player has a kind of really annoying, like suffocating structure. I always hate playing against like when the C3 knight can hop into B5 here with impunity. That's like a massive pain in the ass. In order to defend add a supplementary defender to the C7 square here, Andrey's had to move his his queenside knight over to C8, which works. It kind of, you know, because like the rooks are always annoying to activate. That was a big theme in the last 2 games where in the defended pawn variant, Ryan was sort of going out of his way to push his A pawn to make the queenside rook relevant in any way. And I think I think it's not the worst thing in the world having to sort of move your A rook here over to the C file kind of early on. So you definitely want to. I like the pushing this knight out first. Whenever you've got like the frappuccinoed bishops and then the knights out, it's kind of a whoever can move their knight out first in order to pin the opponent's knight. Usually, you know, that's like a bit of a tempo advantage. It's like annoying here to be white because you obviously can't recapture here with the knight because then you lose your bishop. And I mean that like a bishop in the corner here that's uncontested for 5D reasons is like absolutely insane. It makes for some Monka-esque moments. This is, I think that I like this move, like pinning white's knight, hitting white's knight, crucially, and also kicking this knight here because it's such a nuisance. You really like what you want to do in that position is something about your opponent's probably best piece, especially for 5D reasons. This knight can wreak absolute mayhem. Crazy. Who's the current world champ? Samet himself? No, actually, as much as I am kind of, I'm the biggest content creator for 5D chess, but I'm definitely not the top 5D chess player. I'm in the top 10. You know, I'm in contention. I was in the final bracket for the World Championship here. But no, we lost to Dreamer, who many would argue, who is the top rated player, who many would argue is the favorite to win the whole tournament. But you know, sometimes it'd be that way. We didn't play that terribly. Dreamer right now is the top rated player. Technically, I think Lexi, who's been inactive for quite some time, he's like the one who has won the most recent sort of like big tournament, I guess. So technically he kind of holds the title. But yeah, someday I'll start 5D just after I improve even more at 4PC. I wasn't aware that Prof hadn't yet played a lot of 5D chess. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, so this is the first time that we've had a World Championship tournament. The game's only been out for sort of like a year, closer to a year and a half now. So around the anniversary, the 1 year anniversary of the game is when we sort of started, is when Pfannkuchen himself here decided to put together this World Championship tournament. So no official World Champ has been, you know, decided yet, has been decreed. Solved all the puzzles, never played a game, need more info on opens before I attempt. Well, the great thing about this game is there isn't a ton of info on opens, right? You know, but there's some stuff that you can learn. This is really interesting now, because okay, so Ryan opting to so the whole idea of Ryan, as we've learned, Ryan loves to castle. Now, castling, huge liability in 5D chess, but as we've said in the past, you kind of have to you have to have mastered the rules to break the rules, right? And in a situation like this, I think he's probably done approximately his due diligence to make this castle okay here. I think that Andrey in general is really good at cracking structures like this. It's gonna take a quick moment here to express my surprise that I guess what else do you do here as Ryan, right? See, now this forward knight is actually a big asset for Andrey as well. So, like maybe the motivation to sort of park the knight here on d4 the previous turn may have been to kick this knight. But if you're trading this knight for this knight, then you're trading yeah, you're eliminating like a kind of annoying piece that's on your side of the board that your opponent's got, but you're also throwing away your most developed piece and potentially one of your best offensive assets. And there's no reason that this tension shouldn't, you know, like if he decides to kick this knight later, then yeah, sure, you can take that opportunity to trade, to sack your knight into his. Right now, there's an interesting... Okay, so obviously now there's immediate for and anyone who's not super comfortable with 5D tactics. You can't just take this knight with this knight, because now that the king has castled, it's immediately losing, because the bishop takes the bishop. That forces the king to come up, and then the knight here it has got mate in one. Because the knight here, if the king is here, checks the king one turn in the past. So now this knight is super pinned. Before it was pinned, but also it was like defendable against. It just put you in an uncomfortable position. Now this knight is doing some real heavy lifting, but this knight on its own on d4 isn't going to be enough to, you know, to sort of like break through the castle structure here. So, well, what are we likely to see here? Andrey in positions like this absolutely adores pushing pushing his h-pawn. So that's an option. I don't know that you want to encourage the... This knight capturing the pawn on a7 is like kind of annoying, or just moving to a7 at all. So there might be a world in which you choose to capture, because vacating the c6 square obviously undefends the a7 pawn from this knight. So it's possible that it might be worth, like if you think that it's just going to be too much of a pain in the ass to deal with this knight on the flank here, you might just, as Andrey, decide to trade it away. It's very possible. Anniversary turn to get another scam for me. Yeah. Yeah, so there is an opening book that sort of goes into a little bit of opening theory for turn 0. There's a Lee chess study that Ryan put out. Ryan playing in this match here for defended pawns. So there's some literature out there. Jesus God, calm down, chat. Dreamer and Sirtus having a moment here. Okay, rook f7 here. Sorry, rook f8 defending f7 here is a fascinating move. F8 defending f7 here. Okay, so one of the reasons that you wouldn't want to... Okay, so let's dissect this. Andrey spent a lot of time on this move. By the way, our players here, Andrey with the black piece is a little bit behind in time. That's a really surprising sack. This reminds me of the Dreamer versus Los game that we reviewed, right? Something like this, I think, happened. It was actually a really similar structure. Okay, wow. Encouraging the trade there. Ryan did really like this structure for... Okay, this is actually incredibly similar to a game that we reviewed recently. Okay, so one of the reasons that you wouldn't want to immediately get this knight off of f6 is that it leaves off f7 undefended and also enables the white player to potentially travel with the bishop onto f7 in the future, because it opens up like a diagonal in time to the f7 pawn for the bishop, right? By preempting this knight move with a defense from this rook, you basically avoid exactly that pitfall. So rook f8 was a move to free up the knight on f6 to be able to sort of push the aggression toward the opponent's kingside. This exchange, like, yeah, this knight was really annoying, but this bishop probably more annoying. Bishops are super valuable, so like it's not always worth to sack a bishop for a rook, and definitely you wouldn't want to do it immediately because this bishop is actually doing a ton of work. It's really difficult for the black player to kick, and it's just a massive pain in the ass for the black player to deal with, because it stifles his movement and also makes, for example, a bishop travel onto f7 on this board kind of an issue. But hold on. Okay, Ryan opting to play e4 here. I'm playing e4. I'm playing e4, which is interesting. Okay, so well, how does the black player kick the bishop off of this square? One of the ways to do that might have been to draw the knight on d4 back to f5, which is no longer a move, so limiting your opponent's knight moves, and you know, developing in the center here, taking control with this pawn chain is always a good move. Is there anything more pressing than that this move addresses? Difficult to say. It does, okay, it adds another defender to the f2 pawn, which might seem like whatever, but actually can be a big deal in this position. You would love to push this pawn up to e5 because there are no pawns that can contest this bishop at this stage, right? It's just not a thing. Because that's like a weakness in his structure is d6 because of the way that he's pushed e6 and c5. So a pawn here is pretty killer because it means that you've got to... It's just a pain in the ass to trade for this bishop, and once you do, suddenly your opponent's got like a pawn on d6, which is going to be maybe like a thorn in your side. It's going to be difficult to sort of like clumsily maneuver yourself around there. I'd say definitely not a big deal that e4 cuts off the frappuccinoed bishop on g2. I really like Ryan's structure here. It's pretty early in the game, so it's difficult to say for sure how this is going to go. But if anyone can break through this, I think it's going to be Andrey. So we'll see. g4 instead of e4 felt super interesting. I think g4 is a super, super scary move to make. You don't want... There's no reason to weaken your structure. I don't think you get enough out of it. I actually really don't like g4. I think it's unnecessary and doesn't... I don't think that it really threatens what you want it to threaten. Okay, Andrey, in this position, opting to... This was a fantastic outpost for Andrey's knight as well, because none of these pawns were going to be able to kick this. And it was his most forward piece. On one hand, I'm sort of surprised that he opted voluntarily to trade it away. On the other hand, you know, this knight coming in here was actually going to be a real nightmare. And what this does is basically pins this pawn as well, so that like the pawn push here and the pawn bishop pair here is going to be sort of impossible for him to create, because otherwise he hangs the bishop. You know, which is the thing. So actually, you know, I like that. I think defensively resourceful by Andrey. Now he has to decide what he's going to do with this knight. Now, this knight was doing a good job of preventing the queen from hopping in, or the bishop for that matter, for hopping back onto the f-file and maybe threatening a travel. It's possible that maybe Ryan has some spooky options. But in any case, Andrey's got to do something with this knight. Not too many options here, considering travels, which is kind of nutty. That's fascinating. Wow, what even is the idea there? Check takes. Oh, check takes, then fork the king and queen, but this bishop recaptures, which is an issue. Oh, but it's only one turn in the past, so actually the bishop can't recapture. Ah, okay. Andrey, clever. All right, so here you check. If moves over here, then you're probably screwed somehow. But okay, then that's an interesting travel. Okay, so there, if you force the bishop to recapture, then the knight here takes here with check and forks these two pieces, and this bishop can't recapture, which is interesting. But he opts not to go for that. He wants to keep his timeline. Maybe he thinks that giving Ryan the offensive timeline options is detrimental. Ryan's got the bishop pair here. It's difficult to tell the extent to which that's an advantage. Wow. Okay. Ryan opting here to trade the bishop away. It's his forward piece. It was a real pain in the ass for Andrey to deal with. But he would rather prepare a Tchaikovsky. Yeah, so here... Oh, shit. Ryan with the Tchaikovsky. Okay, so what Ryan has done here is force the black king to move to a square that is adjacent to a pawn that was undefended. So what you can do now, offensively, as the white player, is move your queen to the square that was undefended that is now adjacent to the opponent's king, but move it back to a turn before the king made that move to that adjacent square. So if Ryan can take the g7 pawn like 2 or 3 or 4 turns into the past, then that is going to checkmate Andrey's king on f8 on this timeline. So that's I mean, that's Peppo G. Take notes. Take notes, ladies and gents. The Ryan, Andrey, I mean, it's difficult to say like what it means to sort of invent ideas, or like be the, you know, progenitor of like general concepts in a game like 5D chess. But Andrey kind of was he's the namesake, or at least he gave the name and popularized this tactic, like the tactic of the Tchaikovsky. Or at the very least, he is the person who did it, who I saw do it and then talked about it on my stream. I'm sure that other people have done this in the past, but basically Andrey loves Tchaikovskys and he's been doing them, you know, since like the 90s. And so there's something poetic here, in his having his back against the wall to, you know, his sort of like pet tactic. But anyway, he's got 4 minutes to figure out what to do. 4.5-ish. His opponent with more than 3 times the amount of time remaining, which is really brutal. You have to ask yourself what the hell you're doing as Andrey. What options do you have? You don't have many. One of them is to prepare a travel of your own. But your opponent can, of course, opt to, like, if you set up a Jurassic, then your opponent can just not do the travel and then wait to get, like, a mating travel on this board, which would be, like, in 2 turns, this queen would travel back to the turn where it can attack the... Ooh, the bishop out is absolutely brutal. Okay. Now Andrey's kind of boned. For so many reasons. Okay, so there's like a check and then a travel to the turn where this queen is defending itself on g7, which is like absolutely brutal. That's monstrous. Even if you could make a timeline as Andrey and then go back and recapture the queen, then after queen captures, king captures, this bishop is going to deliver mate somehow. You can't push this pawn to block the queen's travel to here, and also block the bishop from f7 because queen h6 is mate in 1. So you're pretty fucked. You're pretty screwed as Andrey here. I'm sorry to say. That's just the way that it be. Probably because you can't deal with that and also set up a Jurassic. I guess the best thing to do is to Jurassic immediately. Kind of like what we saw him try toward the end of last game. It's many fewer turns into the past, But it is a queen rather than a rook that he's Jurassicing with. So, you know, it's 5D chess. You never know. C7, not like a super mobile position to have your free queen. But, you know, what you got to do now is, Andrey, the game plan is simple. You just throw your pieces at your opponent, you know, and hope that your material advantage is actually something that you can convert. In a variant like turn 0, I agree with this capture immediately. I think that that's actually a call. Ooh. This is maybe a spicy meatball. It's difficult to see how exactly Andrey can capitalize. If anyone can, it's Andrey. He's got 3 minutes on the clock. Delay again is doubled now that there are 2 timelines to 10 seconds rather than 5 before the clock starts ticking. Andrey actually losing his kingside knight is a bit of an issue because it's difficult that's like the easiest piece to develop toward your opponent's king. There probably isn't a world in which he can do like an inactive soft mate plus an exile. This is an uphill battle here for sure. Okay, so this is the weakness that Andrey has created by sacking his rook on f2 is one that his opponent is attempting to cover up by just getting his bishop onto this diagonal here. I think that this knight move makes a lot of sense, trying to open up this diagonal. I think bishop here and then takes and then recaptures with the bishop, and or threaten the queen with tempo is interesting. Sacking the queen here is definitely an option that he is immediately going to consider, but looks kind of crazy. And I think probably doesn't do it for him. Maybe let's get me in this corner here so we can see the gameplay a little bit better. Wow, okay, 2.5 minutes on the clock. He does opt for the queen sack onto the bishop on f4. Immediate recapture, of course, because you don't want that queen anywhere near you. As Ryan, get the queen back to, okay, and now you've got the defensive queen option as well. The other thing is that this reveals, okay, so sacking, I think that actually this like active defense is necessary for Ryan to do to buy himself some time. He defends this pawn, he kicks the queen, but also Andrey now trying to figure out how many turns he has left before he loses the game. The thing about being able to trade for this knight here is that it plays a critical role in the defense of the white king side, because not only is this file going to be a potential point of entry for the black queen to checkmate the white king, but also now h4 will open up, not to mention d4 here once this knight trade happens. This knight, of course, plays a crucial role in covering this h4 square. Andrey wants to rotate his queen over to the h-file as soon as possible. However, Ryan's kind of forcing the issue by closing up this other triagonal and kicking this knight. Now, Andrey has some decisions to make. This would be a fantastic pivot. Okay, so he definitely needs this knight to get off of the f3 square. So I think, wow, really? That's crazy to me. Okay. I think, yeah, this is, I think, one of the only ways they have any hope of mating. Recaptures with the queen is the safe option. You would love, as Andrey, to be able to pivot your queen over to f6 so you can look at h4 and also threaten to mate here on b2. Andrey with 1.5 minutes left on the clock. He doesn't have very much time to evaluate his options. Kicking this knight is going to give him access to, well, with that pawn is going to actually cut his queen off from the side of the board on which he hopes to eventually deliver mate. Ooh, the counterattack. Okay, this is actually brutal. Now, Ryan sets up a counter travel that Andrey has to respond to. Otherwise, he gets absolutely destroyed here in 1 or 2 turns. I think g3 is probably necessary. Otherwise, you lose immediately. But it also means that Ryan is stabilized for long enough that he can win the game on the original timeline. Andrey realizing that if he doesn't play for his own win, then he's going to lose anyway, so he doesn't worry about pushing this pawn here. Now Ryan does have a travel that Andrey has to prevent like this turn. I think g3 is all but necessary because of the check here that this white bishop can deliver, which is this is a very good, very sharp move here by Ryan. I think this is necessary for Andrey not to lose immediately. Down to a minute on the clock. Ryan with time to spare. He is swimming in his 14 minutes. Right now, delivering check on the e-file. The confluence of aggressive options overwhelming Andrey. Can't do everything at once. He has to make some compromises defensively to afford himself the opportunity for aggressive openings. And that's going to be it for game 3. Ryan going up 3-0 here in the semifinal match of the 5D Chess World Championship. Now, again, as we've said, Andrey had the black pieces that turn. We're going to jump immediately back into it, it seems. Oops. Sorry about that. Just trying to get my face cam back into the bottom left corner. We're just going to jump right back into it. Okay, so you lose the black game. It's not that big of a deal. You can just sort of shuffle it off because, you know, at a high level like this, especially in turn 0, the white player advantage, I think, is pretty massive. Andrey playing knight f3 d4, which I've never seen him do before. Andrey is like a knight f3 e3 player through and through. We're seeing the knight f3 d4, or, you know, knight f3, knight f6, d4, d5, c3, c6 structure, which is very, very common in 5D chess, at least in this variant in turn 0. Immediately with the bishop g5 out, Ryan responding with bishop f5. This is an opening that we've seen time and time again. In turn 0, this is actually surprising because I think the e3 structures are kind of usually more... Wow. Okay. Ryan evacuating f6. Which is usually a bit of an issue because it opens up like a potential travel on the f-file for the opponent. But of course, Andrey's bishop is not on f4. It's on g5, which means it is being hit by this knight move here. The onus is now on Andrey. Has to win this game. So this is 3-0 in Ryan's favor. If Ryan wins this, it's 4-0, game, set, match. So this is match point for Ryan. Now you might think that things look kind of bleak for Andrey, but I mean, in the first 2 games with the white pieces, Andrey was played phenomenally well, and he should have won that game. He had the mate in 1. He just ran out of time before he could submit. And so losing the subsequent 2 games with the black pieces isn't necessarily, it doesn't mean he's like triple on the back foot. You sort of like, to some extent, you expect to lose those games, and then, the onus is on you now to recover with a victory as white. So really, I wouldn't go off of the history. Like the fact that Andrey is down 0-3 does not sway my opinion of like what his odds are in winning this game, if that makes sense. Okay, so Ryan with the parking his knight on this outpost here on e4, and then interrogating the queen side with the queen b6 hitting the pawn on b2. Kind of annoying. This is interesting. This is interesting. This is one of those structures that we've seen so many variations of time and time again in this game. I think... Okay, so as Andrey here, you have to make a few decisions. This c3 pawn is like a huge point of... This pawn is like super important. Like especially in 5D chess. Like the 2 triagonal squares away from the king is like being defended by... My point is, This B pawn is doing a lot of work, so just pushing it up like you might do in 2D chess to prevent it from getting, you know, to prevent the threat from the queen here isn't really an option because like the weakness of the C3 pawn is a huge liability. So defending the B2 pawn with the queen I think is probably the right call. It also means that this knight isn't necessarily like super paralyzed on B2, so otherwise this knight would be tasked with the defense of the C3 pawn. If you had pushed the B pawn instead of like moving the queen to defend this pawn. So I really like this. Super solid opening from Ryan. We get knight B d7. Getting his knight into the game, he's going to be very happy to park it on f6. Really good piece coordination. I don't know how Ryan has managed to do this with the black pieces. I'm not really sure what's happened. Andrey's kind of on the back foot. I mean, not super on the back foot, but like it's just slightly less obvious how he's gonna. Okay, so we get kind of the symmetric structure here. The only issue is, okay, so the white queen is now defending f2, which is one of the reasons that with the black player having the bishop on f5, you can feel comfortable moving your knight off of f3, because like a travel, you know, to like capture the f2 pawn isn't gonna be like the end of the world. White has first move advantage, and I guess it's more apparent in 5D compared to 2D. Yes, I would argue yes. Like we know less well, in some ways yes, and in some ways no. Because the game is still super volatile. Okay, wow, Ryan goes for this trade, which I like and I don't like. I don't like because now you don't have, like the knight on f6 I think is important. But it does actually, losing this pawn here means that the e3 pawn is more accessible for the black player. And if the e3 pawn is more of a target, then the f2 pawn is more of a target. Like enabling this queen to actually take a look at like this, at these two pawns, I think is kind of a big deal. But also, he goes for the queenside castle. That makes a lot of sense given the context of like not having the knight on f6 anymore. It seems kind of crazy, but I think probably good. If we see opposite sides castle in this game, that would be absolutely fantastic. I would love that. There's not a lot of that kind of asymmetry that you actually see in 5D chess. Wow. Turn 0 isn't one of the ones that prevents f7, but makes it less of an advantage for white. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, we get the castle queenside, which makes sense. Although, okay, there's like this triagonal that you have to worry about, but you also don't as a black player because you've got this bishop here that's difficult to kick. This is nutty. The fact that this queen is charged with the defense of this b pawn kind of really sucks. The fact that this knight isn't activated kind of really sucks. As Andrey, I think you probably, the thing is Ryan's bishop is undeveloped, but it's also got like the flexibility of how is Ryan such a structurally solid player? This is crazy. I think in 2D chess, Ryan is the better 2D chess player compared to Andrey. Although Andrey's no slouch himself, but he's just got, his position just looks so much better. I don't know how this has happened. I wonder to what extent the first game kind of messed with Andrey's mental. I mean, This is really it. This is Andrey has to make something happen in this game. I mean, it's fine. He's on the back foot, but there isn't like a pressing concern immediately that's going to lose him the game. He's just we're in a moment here where there's a bit of a lull. You have to decide how you're going to develop really like your queenside structure. You have to decide whether like one of these pawns is coming out, or whether you're going to push this knight up, which is kind of really sad in and of itself. It's like if you push this and it gets hit over there, it's going to get unkicked. It's difficult for Andrey to develop his knight, that's for goddamn sure. I mean, I guess options that you could maybe do like a3 and then b4 potentially, but then any like getting this but then moving this knight out means that you drop the c3 pawn here, right? Maybe trading into this knight here, can't take with the bishop because then mate in one with the queen, so takes with the pawn. Opens up the file for the rook, which is absolutely terrifying and also means that you can't play knight b d2. I guess it's just knight d2, so the other knight's no longer on f3. This is crazy. Andrey really taking his time. I'm very curious how he's going to take this. He doesn't have any fantastic options at a surface level here. Ryan's used just over 2 minutes of his own time. Andrey coming up on 7. Andrey considering... Wow, okay, dropping the defense of the B pawn, which honestly, I don't see how else you really develop. But it's super fucking spooky. It's super spooky. I mean, the thing is, okay, kicking this knight is actually really good because it's hella pinned, right? Like if this check happens, then whatever, like block, then take with check, and then something, and then this is mate. So you have to be careful about that. So this knight is super pinned right now. Takes with the queen. I guess you're content to just allow that and then have, you know, play like rook d1, and you're probably going to castle kingside anyway. So that's fine. I'm just going to sound nuts, but might have potentially considered f3 in that position. Is that crazy? Probably it's crazy. I think knight d2 is probably better, but really difficult. Really difficult to play. Now, Ryan's mantra historically has been see a free piece, take a free piece. The other thing is here that actually Andrey just highlight. That's funny. I was just about to mention this. Okay, so queen takes here. You have the option as Andrey of rook b1 here, which skewers the pawn through the queen, and I mean that just looks terrifying, doesn't it? Like you get a bishop there, you get a you get a queen there, in like a travel, and that's kind of GG's, but it's ballsy, it's scary. Ah, it's so spooky. This is excessively spooky. I think it probably doesn't work. Well, it depends on what the queen does next, but all. The thing is, it's defended by the bishop and the knight, right? The rook on b2. Sorry, the rook on b1. I'm losing my marbles. There's been a lot of 5D chess that we've gone through today. So castle. Honestly, you could castle here. You could castle here because it's not like this. Oh, he looks at travels. That's pretty brutal. But not the end of the world. Then again, it undefends f2 on that. He does it. The mad lad. Okay, there, if queen takes, you can just castle on that board. And it's actually fine if queen takes in the past. Okay, I like this, because you got to make something happen. Okay. Andrey rising to the occasion. Wow. No, castles here is playable. I'm pretty positive. Because it's not this, if he tries to set up like an anti-castle travel, you just lose, right? It's like this knight is pinned, this bishop, if it moves, it's mate in one. And there's this bishop blocking anyway, so I don't think it works. Yeah, this is kind of crazy. What was just said? Knight takes c3? Why is knight take c3? And then mage said that does look good. I don't know what you're talking about. I think that might be mate immediately, because check with the take the bishop on f5, and then whatever happens, sack the bishop, and then queen up is mate. I think. I don't even think it works. But wow, okay, we got the queen sack travel. Wow. Okay, really. Question is, can you castle here? There is no pawn there on the other board to recapture. Andrey actually can make a travel to recapture that queen with the knight on b1. He can Jurassic his rook. Oh no, he can't, because the knight was occupant. Never mind, it doesn't work. Interesting. Okay, so the thing that Andrey has to worry about here is like a potential mate if like he's got to defend this pawn. The pawn is defended by itself on this board. It's also defended by this knight. Honestly, I'm wondering if maybe castles is not the best choice. Yeah. No, I agree. I think adding a defender to the back rank, does that lose immediately? I don't really know. This is crazy. I did not expect this to happen. I think you probably got a castle here, right? I just don't see how else you defend. Wow, I mean, okay, the position is much more volatile here for the white king than the black king, but if you can stabilize as Andrey, you win. I'm kind of surprised that Ryan went for this. He must have been really sure of himself. Got about 10 minutes on the clock for white, 15 for black. This is so sharp. Holy shit. Not sure if it's good, but it's fun. I'm kind of shocked, but I guess he saw, maybe Ryan felt the pressure of, like, the position looks good because it's so kind of locked up and white can't really break through, but I think if you give white time, probably they can make something happen here. Wow, it's crazy how quickly the initiative sort of shifted from the black player to the white player, I feel like, on this board. I don't really know how that happened. Castling was playable because there are no time travels here. Yeah, Andrey's got the double travel, right? It's absolutely brutal, man. This is crazy. This is crazy. I'm curious to see how Ryan does here, because this king is now vacated here, so there's no world in which this queen can capture here and mate. Like this turn, it's defended. Next turn, it's going to be defended like by this bishop, and then the king will be gone from this square, and there's no like this rook covers the back ranks, so there's no, there's not going to be like a straight up diagonal mate that way it's going to succumb to here. I mean, don't get me wrong, having the queen in the back rank like this is absolutely mortifying for your Andrey, which is the reason that Oh, you know what though? When the present catches up, this bishop can take this bishop so hard. And that's fucked, right? That check, and then sack it, and then the queen mate. If Andrey can stabilize here, he's got so many options. This is terrifying. Ryan can inactive soft mate here. Get out, Andrey. Ryan's a player with class. Sag. The one thing that Andrey maybe has to worry about is, well, no, because the back rank, like, okay, if this knight wasn't defending this square, then it would be spooky-ish because the king on this timeline hasn't yet castled. Knight takes. You can recapture, but I don't think you want to, probably. Right? Like, this pawn can take this knight, but you probably don't want to give up your turn here. Although opening up this diagonal maybe is actually good for you. But this, I think that you want to do something here. And then you really want this bishop takes this bishop, right? I think. That just seems crazy. If you have mate in 1, look for better. I think Andrey might have had mate in 5 right after the travel. Well, what? Recaptures mate in 1. Give me a sec. Give me a sec. Give me a sec. Give me a sec. Oh yeah, recapture is mate in 1. You're right. Yeah, sorry. Recapture is mate in 1 because then it's not your turn here, and this queen takes this bishop. So right you are. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Sirtis. Yeah, so Andrey's gotta worry about this bishop a little bit, because if you can't right now get checked on this board. This knight is also threatening this queen, by the way, in like a moment, which is something that you kind of have to worry about. Gotta defend this bishop. What do you do with the bishop? I don't really know. That knight here really stifles the movement of this bishop, huh? Kind of sucks. Kind of really sucks. I wonder if Ryan needs to defend. Well, no, because then it still has to get defended, right? They get caught up in parallel. Knight g3 0L and queen takes e2 -1L is a threat. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying if he doesn't defend the bishop on this board, then on this board, knight here will check the king here. And so the queen capturing here, yeah, he won't be able to defend. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely true. This is quite a pickle. Andrey down to about 7 minutes. Ryan with 13. Yeah, but the thing is that wouldn't happen, right? Because if you're Andrey here, you have the initiative. So that would be like if Andrey does nothing. I was considering that move myself. It means the queen can go here for what it's worth. But I don't think that really means very much. This is spooky. This is spooky. Kind of fun. Both their knights are threatening each other's queen. That is fun. That is fun. Yeah, so I wonder what I wonder what Ryan does with his queen. That's the move that I was contemplating. It's out of range of... What's nice is that this rook defends this knight, by the way. I think that's actually not to be overlooked. I mean, it's got a bunch of defenders already, but... If bishop here, then I guess... Maybe the queen just takes the rook. I want to know how you defend bishop takes bishop here as... Maybe I'm overstating the fact that this is... Because this knight here defends... like on g4 here, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. Because this is the board where the light square bishop doesn't actually... He straight up takes the knight, inviting a trade of the queens, which is interesting. Hey, see a free piece, take a free piece, right? A return, poison. This is the potentially climactic fourth game of what has turned out to be an absolutely incredible set here between Ryan and Andrey. Okay. Wow. That really liberates the bishop too if... Takes. Oh yeah, on this board it's not even like check. Dude, holy. What's the score? It's currently 3-0 in Ryan's favor. The very first game of the set, Andrey, both players had 0 seconds on the clock, and Andrey had mate in one, but flagged before he could submit it, which is heartbreaking. Queen takes c2, force queen trade seems interesting. I think you kind of have to do it, probably. I think you kind of have to do it. I don't know. What else do you do as Ryan? Andrey's got 2 travels, which is spooky. Andrey's queen on the bottom board is like super spooky. There's actually a world in which Andrey on this board, I think next turn maybe, can sack the rook and then bishop here and then travel to capture this queen here. Could be good. Could be good. To get back the only queen once the queens are traded. I think forced queen trade is probably beneficial for Andrey. Because if he stabilizes, he's just up, right? Wow. Okay, Ryan coming down to only double Andrey's time now. What we're witnessing is potentially the last 15 minutes of the last semifinal match that will determine who will be in contention for the 5D Chess World Championship in the finals. Can Andrey make it happen? We're gonna see what Ryan's got. Like I really thought that Ryan won himself the initiative in the early game. I think he kind of ended up overextending. I don't really understand how that happened, but it did. How poetic. A travel in the moon is worth 2 in the sink. How about bishop b5 after Andrey theoretically stabilizes? That's an idea. Bishop b5 is an idea. Okay, so we force the queen trade, which I think maybe is kind of one of Ryan's only moves. Andrey's not out of the woods just yet, by the way. I mean, it's basically forced. You got to do this. Yeah, and now Ryan gives it right back. The knight, that is. Right, and he does do it with check, which is slightly frustrating if you're Andrey. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, Andrey can just take this bishop down here, which is kind of nuts. He's got to worry. He's got to not lose on this board. That would be fantastic. What are the threats here? Yeah, I mean, you got to move the king to the corner. It's not like you have much other choice, right? Suppose you could exile it if you really wanted for some reason. Fact is, Andrey needs to bounce back in order to stay alive. I mean, that's for sure. Well, he certainly needs to win this game. That's just patently true. Where's the check? 2D check. It's annoying. It's just the knight here hits the knight on e2 kicks the king on g1. Exile top board looks fun. Exile top board looks bad. And you give your opponent back a queen. So it looks super bad. Things can be fun and bad. No, you're right, you are. Oh, look at the okay, so Andrey here, I think maybe considering whether he has to worry about defending on the bottom board versus just taking here with check, and I think you off rip, just straight up. Ooh. This bishop trade is really interesting now. Okay, oh wow. All right, Ryan, this is super sharp. 3.5 minutes on the clock for Andrey. All he has to do is not get got by the plethora of pieces here. That are knocking on his door. This is fascinating. I think you can probably take with impunity here. It's not like he has timelines. What are those knights gonna do? The bishop doubly he's the f2 and h2 pawns defend g3. No other really. I mean, okay, so the weakness here, I really like taking the rook and forcing the recapture with the king, because you want to just clean up these pieces here. On the top board. Okay, so knight takes g5 on the top board does threaten mate in 1 on h3, but knight f3 on the bottom board defends. So that's not the end of the world. It is tricky here. These two knights are spooky. Andrey's very literally backed into a corner here, but if he can get out, I mean, he just wins the damn game. The king, by forcing the recapture, Andrey has also forced the king to abandon the... He doesn't take. But why? Why doesn't he take and threaten mate in 1? Yeah, he's forced the king to evacuate the defense of the b7 pawn here. What's going on here? What's he thinking? What a wild endgame. Wow. Okay, so the clock is now ticking for Ryan here. He has to make something happen with those two knights of his. Otherwise, he's just going to get absolutely smothered. Threatening the back rank mate is not a bad idea, but it is kind of spooky because he threatens... Because Andrey's got back rank stuff of his own going. He can always castle. Andrey can always castle to prevent that from being an issue. This is wild. What's the initial time? It's 20 minutes each with 5-second delay. That's the default time control. I care what the things kings will do in TVH, but it can't be good for white. Or sorry, what the knights will do. I don't think the knights are too much of an issue here, to be honest with you. I don't see how to... Well, listen, Ryan's got 7.5 minutes to figure it out. Still 3 times as much time as his opponent. Andrey's got about 2.5 minutes to stave off the threat of these knights. I think it's going to be somewhat straightforward for him to generate threats of his own. Okay, I think I like the king threatening... But still, I don't understand why Ryan didn't take this bishop while he could, because now he can't play knight g5 to threaten the maiden 1. Can someone tell me? Someone tell me why he kicked the bishop instead of trading? I really don't understand. Yeah, that seems insane. Okay, threatens the back rank and threatens the knight here by castling kingside up here. Sorry, castling queenside up here. That's insane. Okay, so you have to defend against this. Probably you want a castle. And I don't think you have to worry about any crazy tactics with these knights here, do you? The other thing is that Andrey's got to be careful about travels, because this knight is going to hit the king on the bottom timeline if he does and lets the present catch up. I mean, the other option is to... You can either castle and tell your opponent, like, okay, I fucking dare you to capture this rook with your king up here. Alternatively, you can pull the rook back. I like the castle myself. And then opening up to deliver check whenever you want. Oh yeah, because then the... okay, check would then force like a recapture here. Stepping into this... Okay. Ryan gives up his move on the top board. In order to enable this... Ooh, that's an interesting travel. I don't know if it works. Yeah, and then check. And then, okay, so the idea here is that you can deliver a check with the pawn. If... This is interesting. Okay, I want to know Ryan's response to this. Oh, sorry, let me get my face out of here so you guys can see what's going on the bottom board. The bishop travel is... is to a board where the king has castled. So that's good. Soft maiden 1. Andrey's blundering maiden 1. Can I get the soft maiden 1 from chat? What's the soft maiden 1? Oh, he's in check down here. So what's the soft maiden? Knight e2? Knight e2 was maiden 1? Sorry? The soft maiden 1? Is that bad? Okay, I don't understand. Okay, so move the king away, which I think is a good option. Now... Wow, this is crazy. He's got another timeline to play with. Knight e2 check the king in the past. Oh, I understand now. Okay, this knight checks this king in the past. We're clear now. That I actually missed. Thank you for bringing that up. Andrey actually did by castling blunder soft maiden 1. I understand now. Wow. Okay, that I had missed. Let's go down here. Yikes. Big yikes. Okay. Holy shit. Andrey found a way to recapture this knight, which is fucking brilliant. And also like threaten mates of his own. That was phenomenal. Okay. We're all caught up. Holy shit. Okay. Wow. That's crazy. Ooh. That's going to be a yikes from -1L or +1L, I guess it is. Is that... What do there? Okay, Andrey doesn't have any timelines left. So now he can recapture the soft mating piece with his knight on +2L. You have to capture the bishop there. I don't really see what else you can do. There isn't like immediate mate on that board, I don't think. Now he has to deal with another 3 mates. It's true, but it's better than just losing. Yeah, you gotta take that knight. Andrey's got less than a minute on the clock now. Okay. Wow. All right. Andrey's waiting, trying to decide. I guess the alternative is... Oh, no, but he can't. Okay, he could have exiled, but then the bishop taking the rook would mate his king up here. 40 seconds on the clock. About 5.5. Oh, shit. Right. I forgot all about this. This is soft mate now on that board, right? Yikes. All right. It was too much. Okay. Holy butts. Oh, the castle on that timeline. You should have just brought the rook back. I completely missed that this knight had the soft mate with the knight in 2 there. Jesus Christ. Okay. That's going to be it. That's going to be GG. I feel like Smet's flagging even if he doesn't play. Wow. Overwhelming. I mean, those were very, I feel like, romantic wins that Ryan had in the turn 0 with like the sacrificing all of his pieces and it being like just enough to deliver mate, you know what I mean? That was crazy. Andrey, I mean, this would have been a much different set. This would have been a much different set if Andrey hadn't unfortunately been unable to input mate in 1 to submit that move that he had on the board. But you know what? Ryan did it. Okay, even like notwithstanding that, I mean, the onus was on Andrey and it was going to be really difficult if he couldn't win with the white pieces here in the second set regardless. And so, you know, it was a good set. It was a valiant effort. And I think Ryan really earned it. Game would ended different. It would have been a different match overall. That's for sure. But the fact that Andrey couldn't convert the turn 0 game with the white pieces, I think is indicative of what was going to happen anyway. Andrey giving up some arrows for the fans here, but wow. Absolutely incredible. The second semifinal in a row. That's going to be it. The second semifinal in a row ends 4-0, which is incredible. Wow. Well, there you have it. That was intense. That definitely took a few years off of my life. That was incredibly well played to both players. I think we saw, it's safe to say, regardless of outcome, incredibly top tier, high level 5D chess here today. Both players demonstrating, as if you needed any other convincing, that, you know, they deserve to be in contention for the title of 5D chess world champion. Absolutely incredible gameplay. That was a lot of fun. Thank you to both players for participating.